Imagine someone followed you around for an entire week with a clipboard.
Okay.
But here is the catch. They are completely ignoring everything you say you believe.
Oh, wow.
Right. Like, they don't care about your stated values at all. They aren't listening to your favorite podcasts, and they definitely aren't reading your social media bios.
So they're just watching what you do.
Exactly. They're only tracking your actual physical habits.
Hmm?
You know, how you spend your money, how you react when someone cuts you off in traffic, what you do with your phone when you're just sitting there bored.
Yeah, that's intense.
It is. And based strictly on that physical data, the question is, what would that person with the clipboard conclude is the actual, driving force of your life?
I mean, it's a profoundly uncomfortable thought experiment
Yeah.
because it just strips away all of our internal monologue, It forces us to look at the cold, hard external reality.
Which we never want to do.
No, of course not. We all have this tendency to judge ourselves by our best intentions, right? But the world in reality judges us by our actions.
And today, we are taking a deep dive into a text that doesn't just ask that uncomfortable question. It actually builds an entire architectural system around solving it.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a really detailed set of appendices and workbook exercises from a book called Rooted and Built Up in Christ.
By Chris Arvelasis.
Yeah, transforming faith into action to grow, serve, and multiply in Christ. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore how this source material takes these often cloudy, abstract concepts like faith, theology, discipleship, and turns them into a relentless, actionable blueprint for daily life.
Which is so needed. And to really ground us in what this text is trying to achieve, I want to bring up this striking visual anchor that the author includes right in the source material.
Oh, the forest picture.
Exactly. Picture a tiny, solitary hiker standing at the absolute base of a towering ancient forest. We are talking giant redwoods or sequoias. Right. These massive, ancient trunks stretching hundreds of feet up into the sky with sunlight just perfectly filtering down through the canopy. And that image, it completely sets the tone for everything we're about to discuss today.
How so?
Well, the underlying premise here is that true spiritual growth is not a quick weed that just sprouts overnight after a rainstorm, you know? To get a tree that massive, to get something that can actually endure centuries of storms and droughts, it requires massive, deep roots. It requires an underground foundation that is actively working every single day to support that enduring generational growth.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you want to grow a massive redwood tree like the ones in that picture, obviously the very first step is that you have to plant a seed.
Naturally.
But what this workbook points out, and it does this almost aggressively in the very first chapter, is that planting the seed is not the finish line.
Not at all.
It is literally just the starting gun. The text poses this right away in question 1. It asks, what if conversion is not the pinnacle of the Christian journey, but only its doorway?
Which, you have to admit, fundamentally challenges a very common modern narrative.
Oh, totally.
Because there is this prevailing idea out there that the moment of belief or that initial conversion is the ultimate goal. That's the end.
The finish line.
Right. But the text is arguing that treating conversion as the finish line produces shallow roots. It creates this scenario where the seed is planted, sure, but it's never watered, it's never cultivated, and it never actually grows into anything that can withstand the elements.
I kept thinking of an analogy while I was reading through these early chapters.
Yeah,
it sounds like the author is saying modern believers are treating faith the way people treat, like, buying a new gym membership on January 1st.
Oh, that is painfully accurate.
Right. Go in, you buy the membership, you take a heavily filtered selfie at the front door, you post it online,
Naturally.
and then you spend the rest of your life celebrating the fact that you are fit without ever actually returning to lift a single weight. But I do have to push back a little here, just on behalf of the listener. Because isn't belief itself supposed to be the absolute core of the faith?
Well, yes.
So if we focus so much on the workout, on the daily actions and the metrics, isn't the text somehow dismissing the mysterious, grace-based nature of salvation?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't this border on just being a checklist of good deeds?
What's fascinating here is that the text actually anticipates that exact pushback.
It does.
Yeah. It isn't dismissing belief at all. Rather, it is demanding transformation as the only logical proof of that belief. The author points back to a crucial distinction in the original source material of the Christian faith itself. The text emphasizes that Jesus commanded his followers to make disciples, not merely converts.
There's a big difference
There's
there.
a huge difference. And if you look at the historical definition of a disciple, it is an apprentice.
Right, an apprentice.
Right, and an apprentice doesn't just sit in a classroom agreeing that a chair is a good piece of furniture.
No, they actually have to build the chair.
Exactly. An apprentice gets into the wood shop, picks up the tools, and learns to build it through active obedience and mimicry of the master.
Okay, that makes sense.
The text argues that discipleship, this active, daily, sometimes grueling obedience, must be the central measure of success. It's about dragging faith out of the purely private, internal realm of just having feelings and putting it into the light as a life of visible action.
Okay, so if discipleship is the workout in our gym analogy,
Yeah.
then we really need to know what the actual exercises are.
You do.
Because nobody gets stronger just by staring at a barbell.
Definitely not.
The workbook has this section called the Obedience Inventory. And it asserts that doctrine shouldn't just be this optional theology that people debate in coffee shops. It has to actively shape everyday decisions.
Yes.
So how do we actually build this muscle, like practically?
Well, the text forces integration through tracking.
Tracking.
Yeah. In Chapter 4, there's an exercise called the Fruit of the Spirit Tracker.
I remember that one.
It takes 9 very abstract traits, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Which are usually things people just vaguely assume they have.
Exactly. Usually, people just generally assume they possess those traits,
Mm-hmm.
but the workbook demands that you track them on a weekly basis with empirical evidence.
You can't just write down, I'm a patient person.
No, you have to write down the specific physical manifestation of patience.
Like what?
Like, did you hold your tongue when your coworker took credit for your idea? Did you calmly handle a screaming toddler instead of snapping at them?
Oh, wow. That's really putting it to the test.
It is. The psychological mechanism at play here is cognitive dissonance.
How so?
Well, when you are forced to stare at a completely blank tracker on a Friday evening, realizing you cannot think of a single tangible instance of gentleness or joy from your entire week.
Yikes.
Right. It breaks the illusion that you are living a transformed life.
And we have to view these exercises through the lens of the environment we're actually living in right now.
Definitely.
The text has a really heavy focus on the modern distracted world. It recognizes that we are just constantly bombarded with noise.
Constant noise.
Look at question 14 in the workbook. It asks you to imagine eliminating passive digital consumption for 1 week, just to see how it changes your spiritual attentiveness.
A digital detox.
A full digital detox.
The purpose of that detox is profound, actually, and it ties directly back to building character.
How does scrolling tie to character?
Well, passive digital consumption, mindless scrolling, binge watching it, is the modern world's anesthetic.
Anesthetic, that's a strong word.
It is, but think about it. It fills the silence where reflection, conviction, and actual thought are supposed to happen.
That's true. Whenever there's a quiet moment, we just reach for our phones.
Exactly. The text makes a compelling argument that the most accurate measure of your spiritual maturity isn't how many theological books you read, it is your visible character. But you literally cannot cultivate visible character if your mental bandwidth is entirely consumed by algorithmic feeds. Your brain actually needs the friction of boredom and silence to process moral decisions.
For anyone listening who is thinking, okay, a full digital detox sounds terrifying. How do I start building this muscle without completely shocking my system?
There's a step for that.
Yeah, the text offers a brilliantly simple starting point. It's called the 10-minute devotional experiment.
I love this one.
It's so good. For 21 days straight, you do 3 very specific things. 1, you read a short piece of scripture. 2, you write down 1 single insight.
And 3.
And 3, and this is the weightlifting part, you record 1 obedience step.
Just one.
Just 1 actionable thing you are going to physically do that day based on what you just read.
The brilliance of that exercise lies in behavioral psychology.
Really? How does that work?
When you read something inspiring, your brain gets a hit of dopamine, you feel good, and your brain tricks you into thinking you've actually accomplished something just by reading about it.
Oh, I've definitely fallen for that trap.
We all do. But by forcing you to write down an obedience step, the text bridges the gap between passive consumption and motor action planning.
You're making a plan to act.
Yes, you are creating a micro-commitment. And doing that for 3 weeks straight begins to rewire the habit loop. It trains your brain to immediately look for the practical application in any new piece of information.
But implementing these micro commitments when you are alone with your journal, in a quiet room with a nice cup of coffee, is one thing.
Sure, that's the easy part.
It is incredibly easy to track your own joy and peace when nobody is bothering you.
True.
But the text doesn't let you stay in a vacuum.
The real testing ground for any philosophy or faith is human collision.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text wades straight into the deep end of community, accountability, and real-world adversity.
It doesn't hold back.
No, it doesn't. It asks a deeply piercing question, question 48. Do your closest spiritual relationships challenge you toward deeper obedience, or do they simply provide comfort?
That cuts right to the core of modern socialization, doesn't it?
It really does.
We tend to curate our friendships to act as echo chambers. We surround ourselves with people who just validate our current state, people who tell us we are fine just the way we are.
We want to feel good.
Exactly. But the workbook argues that true spiritual community must include friction.
Friction.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If your community isn't occasionally making you uncomfortable by holding a mirror up to your blind spots, it isn't a community of disciples, it's just a social club.
And the text pushes that concept of friction even further into the realm of actual suffering.
Right.
Look at question 51. It asks, what if the true test of discipleship isn't what we believe during seasons of comfort, but how we respond during adversity?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is essentially redefining the cultural understanding of leadership and strength.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, our culture usually rewards control-driven leadership. The person who shouts the loudest, who consolidates power, who directs everyone else, that is, who gets promoted.
Yeah, the boss who just barks orders.
Right. But the workbook sharply contrasts this with servant leadership. Through exercises like the service audit and micro-ministry leadership, it forces the reader to evaluate their default posture.
Let's talk about that service audit, because I think it is so applicable even outside of a religious context.
It really is universal.
It asks you to evaluate the aftermath of your interactions.
Mm-hmm.
So when you lead a meeting at work or when you organize a family event, do people leave feeling empowered to take ownership, or do they just feel like they've been issued marching orders?
That distinction changes everything about how you build a culture.
Totally.
Wielding authority is easy. You know, you just tell people what to do.
Right.
But empowering people requires you to invest your own time into their development. And to help readers visualize whether they are actually doing this, the text introduces a fascinating tool called the faith integration map.
Oh, the Venn diagram.
Exactly. You are asked to draw 3 overlapping circles on a page: knowledge, character, and obedience.
And the goal is to look at the Venn diagram of those 3 circles and honestly evaluate how balanced they are, especially when you are put under pressure.
Yes. Because you will often find people with a massive, inflated knowledge circle.
You know all the trivia?
They know all the doctrine, they have all the answers, but their obedience circle is the size of a dime.
Just tiny.
Right. And the crucible of real life, like the difficult boss, the financial stress, the health scare, it acts as an X-ray, it reveals the true size of those circles. A giant knowledge circle without character or obedience just results in hypocrisy and fragility when the pressure is turned up.
Let's pause and just live in the reality of the listener for a second.
Okay.
Put yourself in the shoes of someone trying to apply this.
Yeah.
You are working a 50-hour week. You are trying to keep your kids fed. You have a mortgage. Your inbox is totally overflowing. Right. Real life. And now, on top of all that, you are being told to embrace servant leadership, endure trials with grace, meticulously track 9 different spiritual fruits, audit your friendships for friction, and maintain a perfectly balanced Venn diagram of character and obedience.
It sounds like a lot.
It sounds exhausting. Frankly, it sounds like a recipe for massive burnout. How is a normal, busy person supposed to actually manage all of this without just giving up under the weight of the guilt?
But that feeling of being overwhelmed is the exact reason many people abandon deep spiritual practices.
Because it's just too much.
Right. They rely purely on willpower, and willpower is a finite resource. When you are tired, your willpower evaporates.
Poof, gone.
Exactly. And that brings us to Appendix 4 of the source text, which is arguably the most surprising part of the entire book.
It absolutely blew my mind.
Right.
The text introduces what is essentially a corporate project management and productivity system, but it applies those mechanics directly to the human soul.
Yes.
It borrows the scaffolding of modern efficiency to support spiritual growth.
It starts with a vital exercise called Capture and Clarify, which is designed to deal with mental clutter.
Let's explain how this works, because it's so brilliant. Think of your brain like a computer browser.
Okay.
When you have 50 tabs open at the same time, A tab for an unpaid bill, a tab for a friend you need to call, a tab for a volunteer duty, a tab for a lingering feeling of guilt. Your computer's fan just starts screaming and the whole system slows down.
Oh, I know that sound.
Right. Well, your brain does the exact same thing. It is a terrible office manager. When you leave commitments vague and floating in your head, it generates constant low-grade anxiety.
Yes.
Capture and clarify forces you to close the tabs. You literally sit down with a piece of paper and list out every single commitment, worry, and spiritual task weighing on you. Get it out of your head and onto the paper.
And once it is on the paper, the text introduces the mandate to define next actions.
This is key.
This is where the actual transformation happens. Having a vague goal on your list, like, I need to pray more, is useless.
It just makes you feel bad.
It just induces guilt every time you look at it because you don't know how to start. So the text demands a concrete, physical next step.
Like what?
You must translate pray more into schedule a 15-minute morning prayer block on my digital calendar for Tuesday at 7 a.m. You take the friction out of the habit by making the decision in advance.
So what does this all mean for the listener? I have to play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Go for it.
Isn't it incredibly clinical to treat your spiritual growth like a corporate to-do list? We're talking about the divine, about mystery and faith. Doesn't putting your soul into a spreadsheet or running your prayer life through a task manager completely kill the organic nature of belief? Are we just turning God into a key performance indicator?
It is a totally valid concern, and I agree it feels counterintuitive at first.
It really does.
But the text argues the exact opposite. Applying a system actually saves the organic nature of belief from being crushed by modern busyness.
How so?
When we try to organically remember everything we want to be and do, we fail.
Yeah, that's true.
The organic approach usually just leads to spiritual amnesia the moment our boss sends an urgent email. So to combat this, the text introduces a mental bandwidth audit and a priority filter.
Walk us through how that priority filter functions in real time.
Before you take on any new commitment, even a good spiritual commitment, you run it through the filter by asking, what is the cost of delay or inaction?
The cost of inaction.
Right. If I don't prioritize this specific habit of patience or this specific mentorship meeting today, what does it cost my family or my community a year from now? By externalizing these decisions, you protect your limited mental energy for the high-leverage tasks that actually matter.
Wow.
And the text also advocates for a strict weekly review and reflection session. You sit down once a week, just like a business reviewing its quarterly earnings, but you are reviewing your character. You ask, did my daily actions this week actually align with the person I claim I want to become?
So the goal here isn't to turn you into a robot, it's to prevent you from being motivation-driven. Because motivation is just an emotion. It is fleeting. You might feel incredibly inspired after listening to a deep dive, but that motivation will be completely gone by Tuesday morning when you have a flat tire.
Oh, 100%.
The workbook is trying to make you habit-driven instead.
Because habits sustain you when motivation vanishes. Think about a vineyard.
Okay.
The spreadsheet, the calendar blocks, the weekly reviews. These are not the vine, they are the trellis.
The trellis, I like that.
The trellis is rigid, it is structural, and it is man-made. But without the rigid trellis, the organic vine just collapses into the mud and rots. The structure allows the organic life to actually climb and reach the sunlight.
The trellis metaphor perfectly brings this entire deep dive full circle, right back to the visual anchor we started with.
The redwoods?
Right, that tiny hiker standing at the base of the giant redwoods. All of these systems, the digital detoxes, the intense community accountability, the daily tracking of gentleness and self-control, the productivity filters, none of it is just busy work. It is all meant to build an underground root system to support what the text calls a 5-year faith vision. You simply cannot sustain a massive tree with shallow roots.
A redwood doesn't reach hundreds of feet into the sky by sheer willpower or, a sudden burst of motivation. It reaches that height through consistent, microscopic daily growth, entirely supported by an invisible infrastructure beneath the soil.
We have journeyed through a truly rigorous blueprint today. We started by completely reframing conversion, moving it from the final destination to merely the doorway. We explored the gritty reality of building the daily muscle of discipleship, learning why we must track our physical character and not just our theological knowledge.
Right.
We waded into the crucible of real life, seeing how friction in our friendships and adversity in our circumstances reveal the true size of our obedience. And finally, we looked at how to survive the overwhelming nature of modern life by implementing a productivity system for the soul, closing those mental browser tabs so we can actually focus on what matters.
This raises an important question to leave you with, though.
Okay, what is it?
Toward the end of the material, the text places a massive, uncompromising emphasis on mentorship. It specifically challenges the reader to intensely mentor just one other person a year.
Just one.
Just one. It shifts the entire focus away from self-improvement and toward legacy. So, as you go about your week, think about the image of those redwoods one last time. If the truest measure of those ancient giants isn't just their own individual height, but the vast, thriving forest ecosystem they support, shade, and spawn,
Wow.
how much of your current spiritual energy is actually designed to outlive you? Are you spending all your time, your productivity systems, and your bandwidth building a temporary, isolated monument to your own personal faith? Or are you quietly, habitually planting a forest that you will never even be alive to see grow?